إن الحمد لله وحده الصلاة والسلام على من لا نبي بعده وبعد اللهم صل على محمد وعلى آل محمد كما صليت على إبراهيم وعلى آل إبراهيم إنك حميد مجيد اللهم بارك على محمد وعلى آل محمد كما باركت على إبراهيم وعلى آل إبراهيم إنك حميد مجيد رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقه قولي سبحانك لا علم لنا إلا ما علمتنا إنك أنت العليم الحكيم.
Our life, rather, we can say it has been categorized it into 5 parts, into 5 types. First one is wajib. There are certain things which we have to do at any cost, like the salah, like the zakah for those who qualify to pay the zakah, fasting in the month of Ramadan, hajj for those who are capable to perform the hajj. They fulfill all the requirements. So they are not wajibat. So a person is bound to do this. And when we see the list of the wajibat, it's quite few. You imagine that if all the things were supposed to be wajib, then the life would be miserable for a person. He could not do each and everything. So just few things have been made wajib to prove, to check the obedience to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And opposite to wajib is haram, which means forbidden or prohibited. And again, if you see the list of the haram, there are few things. And imagine if everything would have been declared to be haram, then again the life would become the practical hell. So this is the second level. The third thing is, which is between the wajib, which is not wajib, obligatory, but is recommended. And its domain is quite wider than the wajib. Or we call it mustahab, which is desired, which is recommended. And in this category comes the sunnah also. Some forms of the sunnah. Some forms of sunnah, they fall in the wajib, and some form of the sunnah, they fall into this category, which is, we can say, desired, which is, we can say, desired or mustahab. And as far as this mustahab is concerned, as I said, its domain is quite wider than the wajib. But still, if you see the list of the recommended things, it's not too big. Though more than the wajib, but not too much. Again, it's a limited list. And then comes the third domain, that is mubah. Most of the things are mubah, which is ma la yuthab ala fi'li wa la yu'aqab ala tarkihi, which is neither, when a person practices it, neither rewarded when avoided nor punished. So whether he is doing it or not, it is all permissible. So the third domain is quite wider, it's quite vast. That is and most of our actions do fall into this category, that is mubah. And the third form of zuhud is zuhud fil mubah. And zuhud fil mubah, as we said, that it is that these things are fundamentally permissible for us. As I said, that the domain of mubah, it is quite wide and vast. Most of our activities and most of the things do fall under the category of the mubah, under the category of the permissible things. But herein lies our test as well, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, when He gives us many things, and these things are given to us as a means of test. And this mubah, for example, we are supposed to speak. It's our natural tendency to speak. But most of our talk is mubah, except that certain things we have been told that you should not do, that backbiting, slander, or these things in speech when I talk about. Or in our in our eating, few things are forbidden, rest are mubah. So as far as zuhud fil mubah is concerned, it is especially in certain things where we have the full, we can say, capability, or we have been given the full nod from the Sharia that it's not impermissible for us. Like zuhud fil kalam. Zuhud fil kalam means that as far as the speech is concerned, yes, if a person from dawn to the dusk he speaks on, provided he stays away from certain forbidden things which Sharia has made forbidden for us, then it is allowed, a person can do this. But to just restrict one's speech and and just speak only such things which are beneficial in terms of dunya or in terms of deen or in terms of akhirah. And then if it is not beneficial in terms of dunya, in terms of deen or in terms of akhirah, if there is no such thing that a person doesn't feel or doesn't think that it is beneficial anyway in dunya or in the akhirah or in deen, then it is not, or we can say, it is not appreciated. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the Quran, مَا يَلْفِظُ مِنْ قَوْلٍ إِلَّا لَدَيْهِ رَقِيبٌ عَتِيدٌ. That whatever word we spell out, whatever speech we articulate, there are two vigilant writers for writing this down. إِلَّا لَدَيْهِ رَقِيبٌ عَتِيدٌ. They are vigilant, the watchful beings who are recording what we do, what we speak, what we utter, what we articulate, what we pronounce. They're all recorded. Sayyidina Abu Bakr as-Siddiq radiallahu anhu. So without controlling the speech, when a person is talkative, it's very difficult for him to just achieve the zuhud in this particular field. Sayyidina Abu Bakr as-Siddiq radiallahu anhu, one day he held his tongue and he was just pulling it out. Sayyidina Umar ibn al-Khattab radiallahu anhu, he happened to just enter upon him and he saw Sayyidina Abu Bakr just pulling his tongue. He said, Ma, stop, what are you doing? And Sayyidina Abu Bakr said, هَذَا أَوْرَدَنِي الْمَوَارِدِ. Umar, this has destroyed me. Means the tongue is very important in order to achieve the zuhud and the wilayah. If a person wants to be the wali of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, then four things are supposed to be observed properly. One, zuhud fil kalam, zuhud fil manam, and zuhud fil manam. Kalam, manam, ta'am, and ikhtilat ma'al anam. Four things. Zuhud fil kalam means a person should just observe the silence most of the time. Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, man sakata naja, man samata naja. The one who observes the silence most of the time, he got the salvation. And there's another hadith, Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, when you see a person talks less, there are two things. One, if a person talks a lot, but he's talking always about the deen, that is highly appreciated because that is going to benefit himself and that's going to benefit others as well. So the first thing is zuhud fil kalam. And when a person is granted, when Allah blesses a person with the silence, most of the time he remains silent. Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, stay with him because he's blessed with the hikmah. So one form of just finding out, one form of identifying whether a person is blessed with the hikmah or not, is see how often he talks about the dunya. If you find him always talking about the deen, then most of the time remains silent, it's a sign of his wisdom. So zuhud fil kalam, and then zuhud fil manam. Not to sleep, just we can say oversleep, not to sleep excessively. Yes, there must be a specific portion that Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, that your body owes a duty upon you, an obligation upon you, that you must give rest to it. So, but it should not be excessive. So zuhud fil manam, just abstaining the oversleep. And then zuhud fil kalam, zuhud fil manam, and zuhud fil ta'am. It's avoiding the too much and excessive food. But sometimes a person may need the food because he needs the energy. But it's not that a person just his life is all meant to just have the delicious food. No. A person's zuhud, the zuhud fil mubah, suspends over here. And the fourth thing is zuhud fil ikhtilat mal anam. Zuhud fi ikhtilat mal anam. Anam means the creature of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It's avoiding excessive meetings with the people. Because excessive meeting with the people develop the engagement with the dunya. So when it is necessary, yes, it is quite allowed, quite permissible. Sometimes it is wajib, sometimes it is recommended, highly recommended to meet the people, to interact with the people. But there must be a gap. A person must maintain a gap to mix up with the people. And most importantly, a person must ensure that he avoids anything which is superfluous. which is superfluous, which is not of any use in terms of deen, dunya, and akhirah. Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, min husni islamil mar'i tarkuhu ma la ya'nihi. Of the beauty of one's Islam is to avoid which he is not concerned with, to avoid which is superfluous, to avoid which is of no use to him. Because a believer, as the Quran says, there are many verses in the Quran, like there is in Surah Al-Mu'minun, وَالَّذِينَ هُمْ عَنِ اللَّغْوِ مُعْرِضُونَ. The characteristic of a believer is that you always avoid which is superfluous, which is useless and thriftless. Because the life of the believer is meaningful life. It's not meaningless life. It's not the life which is open-ended. Whatever he wishes to achieve, whatever he wishes to speak, whatever he wishes to do, he can do. No, this life is a meaningful life. So Zuhud, so the fourth thing I'm discussing about, Zuhud fin nas, or Zuhud fi ikhtilat ma'al anam. And these are the four essentials for being pious. Zuhud fil kalam, Zuhud fil manam, or Zuhud fil ta'am, and Zuhud fi ikhtilat ma'al anam. These are four essential elements for being a pious. And ulama say the one who is not having these four things, he cannot be the wali of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But some of the scholars say yes, to be the wali of Allah, there are levels. The base level to be the wali of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is to practice the wajib, avoid the forbidden. And then there are levels up the level of this baseline, like these people. So their level is quite better than the one who is just only practicing the wajib and avoiding the forbidden things. And as far as Zuhud fin nas is concerned, there are many other important, we can say, the details as far as Zuhud fin nas, just avoiding the excessive interactions with the people, engagements with the people. And then Zuhud in following the nafs in terms of taming it for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And Ata al-Khurasani is one of the pious person of the Ummah. He said, it's mentioned about him, Kana Ata al-Khurasani rahimahullah la yaqumu min majlisi hatta yaqul. He would never get up from any session until he would say, Allahumma hab lana yaqina minka hatta tuhawwila alayna masa'ib al-dunya. Oh Allah, you grant us such a strength of the yaqeen which makes the difficulties of dunya easier for us. وَحَتَّى نَعْلَمَ أَنَّهُ لَا يُصِيبُنَا إِلَّا مَا كَتَبْتَ عَلَيْنَا وَلَا يُصِيبُنَا مِنَ الرِّزْقِ إِلَّا مَا قَسَّمْتَ لَنَا. Until you grant us such a yaqeen and such a strength of yaqeen and conviction that we realize that whatever you have decreed for us, it is going to reach to us. And whatever you have decided, whatever you have decreed of provisions for us, it is going to come to us. It means that a person should not find not the honor, dignity with the people. It is with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. وَتُعِزُّ مَنْ تَشَاءُ وَتُذِلُّ مَنْ تَشَاءُ بِيَدِكَ الْخَيْرُ. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, everything is with Him. But we need to just focus upon this thing. And the last thing which we discuss about is that is وَزُهْدٌ جَامِعٌ لِذَلِكَ. The comprehensive form of zuhud is to avoid everything that engages the heart from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It's a comprehensive form. We can just summarize the gist of the zuhud. And there's a last form of the zuhud that is which is avoiding everything which engages our heart from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So we can say in other words, zuhud is all about detachment of the heart, and then its attachment with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. To be detached from all and attached to one is the crux of the zuhud. To be detached from all and attached to one. But unfortunately, our case is the vice versa. We are attached to all but detached from one, that is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But inshallah, when we practice, when we try and we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, we discuss also about the means that will help us to achieve the zuhud. We discuss that inshallah. So the zuhud is, I say, the easiest way to understand the concept of zuhud is that it is our detachment from dunya, but not in a way that we just avoid and abandon the dunya. No. While being in dunya, our heart must be detached from the dunya. As he gave the example of Sheikh Sajad Abdul Qadir Jilani rahimahullah, that while being in dunya, he was a rich person, but his approach to the dunya was defined. So there was no any confusion regarding his approach towards the dunya. So he realized that my heart must be always attached to Allah. There should be nothing, there should be no anything which can cause any sort of any obstruction in this relationship. So zuhud is all about detachment and attachment, simply we can say. Detachment while being in dunya, detachment of heart from the things of the dunya, from the love of the dunya. Jalaluddin Rumi rahimahullah gives a beautiful example of zuhud. He says, our zuhud is not that we should avoid the life of dunya. We should renounce the world. Denunciation is not appreciated in Islam. Prophet said, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, la rahbaniyata fil Islam. There is no renunciation in Islam. He says, he teaches us the approach. He says, Sheikh Jalaluddin Rumi says, rahimahullah, that we know the boat which helps the people to ferry over the river. So boat is meant to float on the surface of the water. So it is life is to be on the surface of the water, to float on the surface of the water. What if a person, he makes up the boat and he places it at the bank of the river? There it's of no use. There's no benefit of the boat on the bank, on the shore. Rather, its benefit is only, it is meant to be floating on the surface of the water. And when the boat is placed on the surface of the water, it can take you to any place in the river. Wherever you want to go, it can take you. It's a means to cross the river. Without this, we cannot cross the river. So it's a necessity for us to use the boat to cross the river. So when we are boarded in the boat, and we set our foot on the boat, what happens? It takes us. And the water which is outside the boat, it cannot do anything, it cannot do any harm to the boat. As long as the boat doesn't allow the water to get in. As long as the water is outside the boat, it won't harm him. Rather, the boat will dictate on the water. It will dictate the terms of the water. Wherever it wishes to go, water cannot stop it. However, the moment boat allows the water to get in, there's the small hole in the boat. What happens? This hole allows the water to get in. Now this water will damage it, destroy it. It won't allow it to move further the way it wish, wherever it wanted to go now. All the freedom is now snatched, restricted. This is how Sheikh Jalaluddin Rumi rahimahullah puts it. He says, we are in this dunya, and its example is a river. This dunya is river. And our life, it is a boat. And this dunya is water, and our life is boat. If this water enters into the heart, if the love of dunya enters into the heart, it will drown us, it will sink us, will be immersed into the huge waters. But the moment we we don't allow the water to get into the heart, we don't allow the love of dunya to get into the heart, it won't harm us. Whatever it won't harm us anyway. Even if we are surrounded by it, we are at the middle of this dunya. It can't do any harm to us. However, the moment we begin to love it, it will deprive the love of Allah. It will deprive the love of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. It will deprive us of the love of the true deen. Then our life will be all meant for the dunya. And this dunya is unlimited. There's no end to it. there was a sheikh. He was quite famous for his ibadah, for his worship of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And slowly, his fame just spread more and more, and he became quite, we can say, muzar, the often visited person. Now people from far-flung areas are coming to see, to get the dua from him, to ask him for making dua for them. And he was very close to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Until the king came to know about his presence, that in his kingdom there's a one guy who is Zahid, who doesn't have any portion of dunya, but at the same time he's very pious, very devoted to Allah, and he sacrificed his life for devotion of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So king developed a strong urge and desire to see him. So along with all ministers and others, with a lot of gifts, he went to see the king. So when he reached there, he saw the king is quite pious, talking about the piety, talking about the akhirah, talking about the God. So it had a great impact upon the heart of the king. And king, after interacting with him, discussing with him, he offered him, he said, Sheikh, I invite you, it's my humble request that here you face a lot of hardships. You come along with me and you live in the palace. The moment king offered this opportunity, Sheikh said yes. Without wasting any moment, he replied, he nodded in affirmative. He said, okay, I'm ready to go along with you, to stay with you in the palace. So the king became very happy when he entered the palace and he saw the royal charm and all the regal and royal charm. He was quite fascinated, apparently, what king saw, what king observed. But the king thought that okay, it's for the first time he's exposed to this royal setting. Maybe he's quite excited. Okay, then he began to just eat the delicious food more and more, and every day he's wearing the new royal clothes. So he's fully engaged in this royal life. Initially he thought that okay, it's the beginning days, maybe after some time he will relapse back to his normal routine. After a few months, there was no change, there was no decline. Rather, the sheikh is getting more and more engaged with this life. So king became now a bit terribly just repulsive towards the sheikh because he couldn't find the sheikh as he expected him to be. Then one day, the king asked the sheikh, Sheikh, I had thought a lot of things about you, but you turned out to be totally zero. You know, I just sent you here. I just brought you here so that you could worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala more and more than you used to worship. Because here, everything was supposed to be just managed for you. But I found that you got fully engaged and attached with this royal setting. So I'm doing all this, I'm a king, and you are a sheikh, you are the zahid, you are the pious person. So it's not expected from you that you do this. Then what lies the difference between you and me? If you do the same thing which I do. So I'm a man of dunya, I'm the king, I'm a man of dunya, and you are the man of akhirah. So what lies the difference between you and me? Sheikh said, I was waiting for this question from you. Anyways, now you have asked me this question. I will answer you this question, but tomorrow we discuss this question. Tomorrow you come to me, I will tell you. Tomorrow, Sheikh came in his old, torn-out clothes, shabby and torn-out clothes, in a small bag carrying his small clothes in it. He said, I'm leaving this palace. I'm leaving this royal life. I just want to go back to my own pathetic life. But if you want to get the answer to the question, you ask it to me. What was the question? Then what's the difference? If you are doing all this, what's the difference between you and me? You are doing the same thing which I do. What's the difference between you and me? If you want the answer to this question, then you have to leave this palace. You have to leave your wife. You have to leave everything. And then you have to come along with me. And then you have to spend some time with me. After that, when I feel befitting, I will answer the question to you. Now the king, it was very difficult for the king to accept this offer. So all of a sudden he said, Sheikh, how can I leave this? You know this, I cannot leave all these things. You're telling me that you leave this kingdom, you leave all this royal structure, and I have to follow you, then you will answer this question to me. I cannot leave this, you know this. He said, I know that you cannot leave this. You will never leave this. That's the difference between. When I had these things, so it never entered into my heart. And these things, for a couple of days, I was knowing that make you realize the difference between you and me, that I'm not attached to these things, you are fully attached. So Zuhud is all about attachment and the detachment. And the heart is attached to the dunya, so he's not a zahid. When heart is detached from the dunya, he is zahid. He can be a richest man of the world. He can be a very wealthy person, but he can be also a poor person. So by the end of the day, what we'll learn is that Zuhud is our approach. Zuhud is our direction. That defines our Zuhud. As I said, Malik bin Dinar rahmatullah alayh, he said, people say Malikun Zahidun, Malik is Zahid. I'm not a Zahid. Zahid is Umar ibn Abdul Aziz. A man sitting on the chair in an office has an ample opportunity to grab the bribe and other things, but he's not taking a single penny. He is Zahid. He's not taking anything. It's not like a person who's never exposed to the bribe, and he always talk about taking bribe is haram. Yes, it's good thing, but he has not been exposed to this particular issue. So the one who is exposed to this thing, and he restrains himself not to commit this haram, he is a zahid person. So this zuhud is, it's not that we leave this dunya and we go to the forest and live. Zuhud is how loyal we are to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, how obedient we are to the sunnah of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. When halal and haram comes to us, what's our preference? What's our mode of priority? Do we prioritize the things? We always give preference to the halal and only the lawful things. We always just avoid the unlawful. That is zuhud. That's the crux of the zuhud. If a person is performing 5 times prayer, he's performing the tahajjud, but at the same time, he does not stay away from the corruption. He does not stay away from the bribe. He does not stay away from the riba. And it's not zuhud. Zuhud is just only prayer obligations. Zuhud is about our behavior, our overall behavior, our overall approach towards the world. That's how we find zuhud. Imam Ibn al-Hasan al-Shaybani rahimahullah. He was one of Abu Hanifa rahmatullah, and he was very famous faqih, famous jurist. Somebody asked him, Sheikh, we have written a lot of big books on the fiqh. A number of books you have written on the fiqh. Why don't you write a book on the zuhud? You know the answer of Sheikh? Sheikh said, you read my Kitab al-Buyu, that is my zuhud, Kitab al-Zuhud. Kitab al-Buyu, which is totally related with the transactions, business transactions, trade. When a person is honest in his trade, honest in his job, honest in his dealings, that is Zahid person. He said, you read my Kitab al-Buyu, the book of transactions. Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, trader will be gathered with the messengers on the day of judgment. A truthful trader is honestly doing his trade, observing the commandments of Allah, avoiding the haram things. Yes, it is zuhud. Zuhud is not only that a person is reciting the Quran a lot, he is making yes, there's alhamdulillah important things. But zuhud is a person's approach. He's a shopkeeper, he's a businessman, he's a trader, he's an officer, or he's an employee. So dealing justly and observing the commandments of Allah in his trade, in his business, in his office, in his different levels, whatever level he has got in the society or position in any organization, whether private or the government. So here his approach, when he is quite fair and just, that is so. And there are many other things, the fruits of the Zuhud and how can we achieve that, what are the means that will help us to achieve the Zuhud.
Subhanallah wa bihamdihi, subhanakallah wa bihamdik, ashhadu an la ilaha illa anta astaghfiruka wa atubu ilayk. Subhana rabbika rabbil izzati amma yasifun wa salamun ala al-mursaleen walhamdulillahi rabbil alameen. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi ta'ala wa barakatuh.